Welcome, everybody, to Will You Stay Tuned? This is the secondary show by the hosts of Newbie Star Trek. You may know us as Marvin, Dan, and Sarah. You might be noticing that Ricardo is not mentioned until just now because he is not part of this episode. However, he does participate in episodes. Otherwise, it's just whoever can show up and has interest in whatever we're talking about today.
Yeah, he had interest. He just ran out of time.
That's unfortunately. The premise of this podcast, Would You Stay Tuned, is that we try to look at the first episode, or depending on the series or show, we try to do a case-by-case thing. But, we try to look at the first bit, the first good chunk of something. And based off of that, we try to determine, is it any good? Should we keep watching it? Would you stay tuned?
Yeah. Oh would God. You keep watching?
Exactly. Yeah. And so, this episode, we have taken on a Netflix original anime series called Pluto.
I didn't know it was a Netflix original.
Yes, indeed. Mm-hmm. It is 8 episodes long. They run about an hour apiece. It is by Naoki Urasawa, who is best known in the West, I think, for Monster, which was also a long, 50-something episode, I want to say, anime series, which was about a doctor who saved a little boy who turned out to be evil incarnate, and what happens after that. But that's what Monster was. Pluto, on the other hand.
So Naoki Urasawa wrote the manga of Pluto.
Yes,
specifically.
But the manga of Pluto, I'm going to get to that now, is actually itself an adaptation of another manga that happened a much longer time ago by Osamu Tezuka, which is actually Astro Boy.
Yeah.
So guess what, motherfuckers? Pluto is actually Astro Boy fanfic.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, and by the end of episode 1, you actually get to meet Mr. Astro Boy. When he meets the little boy named Adam.
Yes.
That's actually Astro Boy. In the West, he's known as Astro, but in Japan, he's Adam.
It's interesting because his name is dropped at the end of the episode as if it's supposed to be like, dun, 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 it's Adam. And then Sarah was like, who's that?
Yeah. This show does kind of assume that you at least know something about Astro Boy. This show kind of needs you to know something about it for it to really hit.
That's what I was going to say, is that last moment and definitely probably some of the references went over my head because I'm not in the know as much as other people.
Mm-hmm.
But nonetheless,
I can see a complete fresh viewer probably has a lot of questions. Can see people being pretty lost.
I mean, interestingly, Sarah also in general just never heard of Astro Boy at all. So
no,
she has no frame of reference whatsoever, not even as a tangential reference.
I mean, it is an older property. I wouldn't necessarily assume that, your everyday person on the street knows who Astro Boy is. But Astro Boy definitely is very popular in Japan, well known in Japan. Mm-hmm. Osamu Tezuka is known by many to be the godfather of anime or the father of anime.
What would you compare it to
in anime
over here in the States? If you could compare, such a well-known title and property. Over here.
They actually compare Tezuka to Disney.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just going to say that. Would that be like a Lion King, a Simba, or
Mickey Mouse.
Aladdin, or Mickey Mouse?
Yeah, okay. Astro Boy is kind of like Tezuka's Mickey. He's the poster child mascot character that is associated with Tezuka.
And it's not just circumstantial. He did somewhat take some inspiration from Mickey Mouse. If you look at the original Astro Boy manga and anime, when Astro Boy's hair points are always spaced a certain way, just like Mickey's ears. Mickey's ears are always
one on the top, one on the side.
In the silhouette. Yeah. So that's intentional. That's an intentional design choice because he's sort of taken that cue from Mickey Mouse.
Yeah. I'm kind of a tertiary fan of Astro Boy because I got to know Mega Man first. And Mega Man is just Astro Boy turned video game.
They wanted the rights and then...
Yeah, basically so.
That is really fascinating to see from other perspectives and what's popular and in mainstream culture in different countries.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because there's a mention of, Disney. You mentioned Simba and Lion King right away. It's funny because Osamu Tezuka's one of his other famous work is Kimba the White Lion. And it is often said that The Lion King is a ripoff of Kimba the White Lion, which it really isn't. There's some superficial similarities, but because they're about lions, so they're going to have some visual similarities, but they're ultimately two very different. One is Macbeth, the other is not a Macbeth story. Right. But I just think that's interesting.
There was a good chunk. There was a good era of the internet though, where everyone just took that like rip-off story as gospel because there was a very convincing set of images that were cherry-picked together that were like images from Kim of the White Lion that were reminiscent of scenes from The Lion King. But the issue is that Kim of the White Lion is a very long-running story where you could over time find enough images that line up with Lion King, the movie. So
fascinating. I mean, I only named that because that was my favorite growing up. I was a big Lion King fan.
Yeah.
And also, before anyone else says it, Osamu Tezuka was like a furry, like sex pervert. So yeah, there's that.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wait, what?
In before the comments. I got there before you.
You can't drop that. You can't drop that information. What are you talking about? He's a furry?
Yeah. Loved mice.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, mice women.
Yep.
For real?
Yep.
Drawers of drawings, etc., etc. We'll get. You don't need to get into that.
Okay.
We're talking about Pluto here, and he's not even. This is an Urasawa work. Remember, this isn't actually Tezuka's work.
It's his reimagining of. Okay. It's a much darker reimagining.
I will have to
actually no. I'm being wrong here because this is an adaptation of Urasawa's work.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's not even fully him.
It's an adaptation of an adaptation, essentially.
Yeah, lots of changing hands here.
Yeah.
But anyway, so with that said, Pluto is a retelling of a major iconic story arc from Astro Boy that by the time of its creation would have already been kind of known to the general like anime wise public of Japan. Mm-hmm. So I would say that the audience that this was written for was likely like expected to know how the original story more or less went.
Right.
And this is very deliberately a grittier, more realistic like take on how the original story played out. And they also inserted a lot more like geopoliticism and stuff like that in there too.
Although the original Astro Boy did include a lot of geopolitical things as well, but it was more of like a fanciful potential reimagining of the world as it could have been versus
and I'd say the biggest things that that this series itself focuses on is just the horrors and trauma of war.
Right.
Not necessarily so much about like any opinions about politics or what country does what, but it's just like war is bad. Okay, it's one of those.
I actually that's one theme I really, I don't want to say enjoyed, but I really that really came across strongly. And what's interesting is that theme was very much strongly felt through AI and humans. So like there's very strong emotions on both sides, even though AI is not supposed to have emotions or thoughts about it. But we can get into that. But
it's like the setting of this particular show seems to have already settled the debate about all the details of AI sentience. It seems like it seems like they've all kind of decided, okay, robots are allowed to live lives. They're sentient and have emotions, and we acknowledge that. But also, we have to make them follow these specific rules.
Well, and legal action has been taken to give robots rights as well.
Yeah,
this all feels so relevant because not only, if you know us from our other podcast, Newbie Star Trek, this question comes up all the time about data and AI and robots and machines.
Yeah, this is very much a data show.
And their rights and their emotions and their relations with humans. And then also on the flip side of that, but also on the same line of that, in real life, we're constantly having discussions in the real world about AI and AI taking over. And while we're not maybe at the point of like a robot walking into your house and like cleaning it or taking care of your kids or driving you somewhere, I mean, I think we'll get there soon. So I'm sure these conversations are going to have to be had, I assume.
Yeah, I guess it might be worth trying to establish how this show tries to treat AI or robots as people. I guess.
So this is like in the future, right? From where we are, obviously.
I think it's a completely alternate future.
Yeah, it's an alternate world where it feels like it would be the future, but who knows?
I mean, they claim it's the 39th like Asian war, right? So
like the
lot has happened.
The 39th Central Asian War. Yeah.
So a lot's been going on.
But we don't even know if it's planet Earth, but then we kind of do because they're in Switzerland and they're talking about the Alps and they're talking about
right. So in
Japan
this world, the USA's analog is called the United States of Thracia. I don't know all of the details about that because I'm not too into Astro Boy, so I don't know exactly how all that works out. But there is the United States of Thracia is like the stand-in for the US. Pretty much the Middle East in general, like is Persia. But specifically in regards to this series and this version of the story, Persia is almost a stand-in for Iraq.
Yeah.
Yeah, seems like it.
Yeah, because there is talks about, well, actually, this goes into full disclosure. I am the one person in this episode of the podcast that just stuck around and kept on watching the show. So
yeah, so Sarah and I have only seen episode 1 and we saw it subbed, so we didn't see it.
All of us watched the subtitle version with Japanese original audio.
Yeah, so we actually were about to we were on the cusp of having a discussion about this before we started recording. Dan pointed out that he thought the Netflix sub of it was a sub of the English, the dub translation.
They do that sometimes, yeah.
Yeah, and you said that's actually better. You actually like that more.
I kind of liked how now that we're talking about it, this is very the scenes I'm talking about are specifically in the second half of the first episode when some of the revelatory conversations between North Number 2 and Paul Duncan, the genius composer guy. Some of the ways they wrote the lines of how they told the story of his mom and stuff, I felt flowed better in the translated or like in the localized variant of the script as opposed to the literal one. Or I think it conveyed the emotion that they were going for a little better.
Yeah, there's a lot of like literal stuff where they would be like, I would point out like, hey, they just said Japan again. They didn't just say, oh, that would be nice. Because like there's a conversation he's having with his professor creator who is saying, oh, you should go on a vacation. I heard Japan's nice this time of year or whatever. And then in the actual spoken dialogue, you could hear him saying Nippon again. So he was saying, so it's a classic way of Japanese dialogue where they just repeat what the other character has said. Japan. Right. And honestly, I do think that there should be space for like naturalizing dialogue a little for the localization because that is part of the game.
And they do. I mean, I can definitely speak on this as I've had a pretty extensive career in localization.
You're a localization producer. Yeah.
But yes, that is something that happens is, things are there are liberties taken for more naturalization, timing, better understanding in whatever market.
Sometimes it helps.
It's a whole thing.
It helps to substitute a context that's completely missing in the language you're translating to. And sometimes it's effective, but like we saw in Squid Game, sometimes you can lose some. You can actually lose some of the nuance. And I wonder if... Or
censorship. There's also lots of localization that covers...
That's the most blatant version of it. But, but I don't... It doesn't seem like this is the type of show where we would have lost that type of nuance. If anything...
Yeah, and to be honest with you, like the differences I noticed were not like major. It's just that I happened to like it more. I thought it flowed better.
Made it more natural. Yeah.
But yeah, to circle back to the Iraq thing, there talks later in the show about there being a major investigation conducted to search for
weapons of mass destruction.
Robots of mass destruction.
Weapons of mass destruction.
Or rather, robots who could be used as weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, fucking God. Here we go.
That. They send
Did someone show... Is George Bush does someone throw a shoe at him?
No, nothing like that. It doesn't get that like on the nose. That's as on the nose as it gets. Like the of mass destruction bit. Like that's as on the nose as it gets.
Wait, what was the famous line? Something. There's no weapons of mass. I don't know. There's like a whole.
But
there's like anyway.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the things I enjoy about Japanese like political commentary on American stuff is that it can tend to be pretty like direct. So sometimes, like for example, like here, literally robots of mass destruction. But then I just finished watching the first season of Chainsaw Man, and like there's a huge part of the show that is a direct reference or in political commentary on gun violence in America. So it's just like, oh, there were so many guns in the past to the point they created a gun devil. And it's like, I do enjoy when sometimes anime is like, yeah, this is just what we think politically. We're just going to literally make the theme like an actual character or make it real.
I dig that.
Yeah. So,
you know what? I feel like we're a little remiss here. We're talking a lot about like bits and pieces of the show. But if you're trying to listen to this, let's just go very generally. So this first episode is split up into pretty much 2 episodes. It just has an A piece and a B piece.
It's 2 completely separate stories.
Yeah, completely separate stories.
Halfway through, I was like, did we sit on the remote by accident and flip to something
totally
else?
Different. Like exactly halfway through the first episode, it completely switches gears and focuses on a completely different set of characters.
Yeah, completely different.
And from what I understand, that's because that's the way the manga was written.
Yeah,
and as a result, when you're reading the manga, that would probably just have been chapter 2. And as a result, for a reader, that would seem totally normal. It's like, oh, we've moved on to a different chapter with a different set of characters. But in the course of Netflix, where you're kind of just sitting for one full episode, you'd be like, what the hell just happened? This is like
okay, to be fair though, this is one of those shows that was released all at once. So since this was kind of an expected binge sort of thing, you could just kind of just barrel on through it and it all blurs together the same way it would if you're reading
it. Still threw me off. I was still like, wait, it's been like 40 minutes.
We're like, are we going to go back to those other people we were with?
Having gone through the rest of the show and going back to episode 1 now, it's actually interesting in that that entire second half of the first episode that focuses only on like a robot who isn't Gesicht or anyone else. That's very unique. It doesn't happen ever again. It doesn't go off on its own and just fucks off and like focuses on a bunch of other characters ever again.
Yeah. And what I found interesting, because I just did a slight bit of research when I was getting ready for the podcast. And from what I could read off of like Reddits and whatnot, that particular chapter with North Number 2 and all that was considered like they considered that the bellwether for the whole series. They said if they didn't handle this particular story well, everything else wouldn't work. So I found that really interesting that a ton of fans agreed this is the most important part to get right. So if they needed to get
I can kind of see why that they think this. It's because North Number 2 amongst the 7 like greatest like robots of the world who are being targeted by the serial killer. Okay. He is the one who was the most designed only to be for battle. He was the military robot who was actually designed to be for war. And whereas the other strongest robots weren't necessarily designed that way. Right. Like they were for other things, but then they were drafted into the war.
Or volunteered.
So is what I'm getting, what I'm kind of getting is the overall arc is there's a number of robots, maybe 7 that you mentioned, that are like these specialized, highly specialized robots, and somebody or something or someone is killing them. And at the end of this episode, North Number 2 is destroyed and then presumed dead, and then also nature guy
Mont Blanc.
Yeah, Mont Blanc.
The watch guy.
Who looked very gentle and nice. So I'm a little sad that he got, he seemed like a kind soul.
Yeah, he was
like
loved by all, loved by animals, friend to nature.
He's the patron saint of the Alps,
Yeah, it was really sad. What a really sad robot to start off.
He had a beautiful smile.
Yeah, and they have like the portraits of this robot with like the birds and I want to
invite you guys to go look up all the character designs for the original characters. They're actually pretty neat to like look at side by side.
They've transmogrified him a little bit to
What's funny to me about Mont Blanc is that the original looks so much like better like as a design, like it just looks like a cartoon character, right? But then like tried to maintain that shape, but instead turned him into this weird like kind of like creepy mask face.
Yeah, so it seems like that's kind of like the overall conflict issue, mystery crux of the series.
Yeah.
So
we got to figure out why this is happening, who's doing it. Is
but
it
not
a
just
human?
the robots, they killed
Is it a
another human
robot?
too.
Yeah, they killed another human who is a massive robot supporter, robot rights activist, I guess you could say.
Now, it is a bit confusing because you're both out to murder robots while also taking down their advocates.
Yeah, which is what the police detectives kind of are confused about, right? They're kind of like, why would you murder? You know, like they're having the same confusion we're having, right?
Right.
And then
like,
also, like, there's no human trace left behind. So then there's also this question of, even though robots are not able to kill humans, it seems like maybe possibly it could happen, and it has happened.
Right.
Mhm.
And so there's this big question of like, is it robot? Is it a robot? Is it a human? Is it some
That
other
Hannibal
natural
Lecter
force?
robot's like my favorite character almost.
Oh my god,
I love that guy.
You know
That's
who,
so bizarre.
who voices him in the dub?
The Brow 155 whatever.
Yeah,
Who voices him?
it's ProZD.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's hilarious. I need to watch that scene again with him.
Apparently he was very much praised for his performance as Brow, because they were like, he completely transforms himself, and he was considered the standout performance for the dub.
Oh, that's great. I want to watch that scene again
so
with him.
Dan, do you want to explain this backdrop of this shadowed away robot doomed to a cave or wherever the fuck he is, Hannibal Lecter type?
Yeah, the Hannibal
Lecter
robot.
So our main protag here, his name is Gesicht, and he is he actually, while looking like a human, is a detective robot, one of the 7 like greatest robots in the world.
Okay, so he's one of them.
Yes.
Yes.
And
I
it's
think
not
we
a Blade Runner
established
thing
that,
where it's
yeah.
not like a is he not, like it's very much yes, he's a robot.
It's
He
a
was
Blade Runner
designed to be a
2040.
detective.
Yeah, it's the new Blade Runner, not the old Blade Runner.
But he
Right,
looks
right.
like a human, so not everyone knows right off the bat that he's a robot.
Yeah, I feel like this is one of those things where if you know the deal before going in, then you're actually like not gonna waste time being like confused about what's actually happening. Because it's like if you already know that he's a robot going in, then it kind of removes a lot of, I feel like, unnecessary mystery. Because I don't think there is much like good mystery in is he or is he not a robot. Same deal with like Helena, his wife, or something like that. It's like,
Oh, actually, I don't know. Was that actually revealed? Is she a robot or not?
she is a robot, canonically.
She is.
But
See, we
the
didn't
fact
know
that
that
she
for
is
sure.
a robot isn't supposed to be like a big deal. So
Although,
It,
like,
does it matter, right?
But the show does make a point of making his reveal as a robot a moment. Like he'll like when he's pursuing. So basically, the way the opening happens is Mont Blanc dies. There's a memorial thing happening, but then how you say his name again? Gesicht.
Gesicht.
So he is assigned to another case of a human being killed because he's Europol. So he's assigned to many cases, and in this one, a human was killed in almost the same way as Mont Blanc, with 2 big sticks jammed near his head like horns.
Yeah,
and then
horn deaths.
And then there was some sort of suspect seen running away from the scene. And this suspect, he chases down into a church that's very familiar, like very reminiscent of the Ballad of Fallen Angels church in Cowboy Bebop. And then, but then like they demonstrate first, they kind of signal that he's a robot by him jumping off the freeway overpass.
Oh God, yeah. When he does that, I was just like, he's not human, right?
And then he changes his hand. And then there's a moment where he tells them, I am a robot. I cannot kill you. So like they very much like make it like a moment, like a reveal.
That's true. That's true. They do make it in a moment. I think they also trying to make it very clear that there is supposed to be a rule against killing people.
Yeah. So they're establishing that like, oh, my gun only shoots a knockout gas. You're fine. There's no way you'll be hurt.
So like that's like those are the ground rules of this world. Robots are not allowed to kill humans.
Yeah.
Or at least they're not supposed to be able to.
They're not like, is it like they're programming doesn't allow it? Or is it more like, you're not supposed to, like, people aren't supposed to kill other people, but they do. You know what I mean?
It's like an Asimov law thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think this is one of those things that gets a little into like the clash between older writing versus newer, like grounded writing. Like older writing was a little more idealized and idealistic and stuff. And so I feel like the concept of like this kind of gets back to later on in the show. It's going to become a lot more important and a bigger deal that a robot can feel the emotion of hatred.
Yeah.
And
I think also the show seems to just take for granted like Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics, which is like a theoretical thing he came up with where he thought if we start making sentient robots, we would need to program these 3 laws into robots. The first of which is that a robot may not harm a human ever. The second law is a robot must always listen to humans unless that violates the first law. And the third law is robots must always attempt to protect their own existence unless that violates the second and first laws. So this seems to be taken for granted in the show as just the truth.
Yeah, just as a general truth, because like it's supposed to be a very confusing and terrifying thing that the researchers looked at Brow's AI brain and could not find any malfunctions in how the AI works. Like the fact that the AI was completely functional and not malfunctioning in any metric by any metric that they know. That's why it was so terrifying that he still found it logical to kill somebody.
So why not take him offline? They clearly just locked him away and like mutilated him.
Well,
and
robots have rights. Robots have rights in this world.
Right to be locked away like that and be tortured? I guess so. I
guess they're just not going to execute him.
Well, they said that the robot said that humans are like afraid of this robot and what he can do.
I think it's also fear. Yeah, they're afraid of what could happen if they get like 2 other robots apparently got close and he killed them, right? So he's apparently very dangerous just to approach. So
yeah, he has like one long extendo arm that he uses repeatedly throughout the show. And it's kind of weird that they allow him that at all.
Yeah, I don't know. Like that he's allowed to have visitors and have the ability to grab things and give them things to people seems odd, but
he's the Hannibal Lecter. Yeah,
he's definitely the Hannibal Lecter of the series.
Yeah.
It's honestly, this world's a little scary, and it kind of reminds me like, could this be our future? Maybe not in my lifetime. No, definitely not in my lifetime.
Definitely.
I don't think we'll be there wondering if robots can hate us or kill us by the time I'm 80 years old. I don't think we'll be at that point, but maybe in the next generation.
If Ricardo were here, he would be telling us all that it's an inevitability that as soon as robots are able to think for themselves, they will hate us immediately.
Is my Waymo car going to drive me into a wall?
Those little
the most efficient way to reduce suffering in the world, it will.
Imagine like a dystopian movie where all the Coco robots banded and like they start like chasing people in the streets.
Like I just the other day, Facebook showed me a memory where it was a post I said. It was like, one day we're going to program a robot to end world hunger, and then it will kill all of humanity and congratulate itself on a job well done.
Yeah, I mean that is a simple.
That's one way.
There's certain like blind spots in certain AI that think that. I remember one of my favorite examples is back in the day when they were developing chess robots and chess AI. One of the early algorithms they came up with, for some reason, it just kept sacrificing its queen instantly as soon as it could, over and over again. And then they were trying to figure out, wait, why does it keep trying to sacrifice its queen immediately? And it's because in all of the greatest chess grandmaster tournaments they uploaded into the AI, into the robot, every like super clutch final strategy involves a queen sacrifice that leaves it in an advantageous position, right? So the AI thought, well, I might as well just kill my queen as fast as possible, and that'll end the game as fast as possible. So yeah, there's gonna be growing pains like that when you like have actual AI do shit, you know. Like,
yes, it should also be stated that the AI as presented in this show is nothing like what we are currently calling AI in the present day.
yeah, they're just essentially just sentient living things.
I mean, I have a question
they're
for
just
you guys.
artificial beings that think for themselves.
Would you want to live in this type of world?
No,
not at all. I mean,
Really?
okay, something
Okay.
that kind of stuck in my mind that comes up later. Thankfully, it doesn't come up in episode 1, but something that comes up later is the notion of robot children.
Mhm.
And as soon as that concept gets introduced, things get a little weird because children don't age. And however,
I mean, you have Adam shows up and is a robot child. So
yeah. In fact, it's core to Adam's being, and like I actually went into research about this because I never really like knew that much about Astro Boy. But Astro Boy's original story, just very very briefly, is that he was originally created by a guy named Dr. Tenma who wanted to replace his dead son with like an artificial son.
It was a Pinnochio story.
Yes, and when Astro Boy like did not prove to be anything like his old son, and also wasn't growing up and just remaining just like a boy, Dr. Tenma like grew disillusioned and sold Astro Boy to a circus. And then that fucked Astro Boy up. And so
there's versions of Astro Boy where Dr. Tenma is just the villain, where he is like a guy with delusions of grandeur, and Astro Boy remains the hero because he maintains a childlike, innocent perspective on human life.
Fun fact, Dr. Tenma shows up in this show.
Well, eventually.
Yeah, somewhere.
You know, that's such a common trope in a lot of like books, films, TV, this forever child type thing trope.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Adam is not alone in being a robot child, though. He's just the most advanced one. The thing is that there is actually later on you learn that there are actual legislations passed to allow robots to adopt, but not
adopt
just
human children
and robot children.
What? Oh, Jesus.
So like this world's kind of like nutty in the fact that like you really have to accept that robots are persons and beings with personalities and everything. However, you also have to at the same time start trying to ignore where they come from, who makes them, who produces these models and designs their personalities.
Well, I mean, going back to Star Trek, I mean, my mind goes to Data. Like, would I want Data to be able to adopt a kid or a child? My mind, knowing the Data that I do know, I would be like, sure, yeah, he's fine. Like, I trust Data, you know? And I'm talking about Star Trek, Data from Star Trek, Next Generation. But like in this world, if you asked me that, I would say no. I don't know about that. I'm not sure. So,
well, I mean, in this world, we do see. It seems like most robots in general are pretty kindly, as far as we can tell. I mean, they're just humans, essentially. The only difference between robots and humans in this show, it seems to be, is just the way they are created. That seems to be the only true difference. In that one is a artificial construction of metal, and the other is biological.
And this was easier to kind of believe at face value back when Tezuka created that world. Like, and that's kind of an issue that I have overall with this series, generally speaking, in that, like, in the end, it remains like that Astro Boy story, and so it remains tethered to some of these older, like, traditions of storytelling or tendencies of storytelling that I was kind of hoping would not show up in this storyline that felt so grounded.
You were hoping that it had like fixed some of the world building.
Or like I wasn't expecting the world building to remain as vague and loosey-goosey as Astro Boy left it in a lot of places. Some places they shored up, like, you know, they wrote in a lot more stuff and nuance, but other parts they just straight up didn't. So
it does feel the whole construction of it does, even though I know this is a newer manga and ultimately a newer anime, it feels very old school in the sense of the themes and the pacing. Like it feels very post-war. You know, like a lot of how anime and manga came after post-war was this lamenting of man, I wish we didn't have war anymore. I wish people didn't have hate. It reminds me a lot of Giant Robo. There was an OVA that came out a while ago for Giant Robo, because Giant Robo originally is basically a live action, like what tokusatsu kind of, except they're big robots. They're people dressed up as robots, and they were just going around, fighting crime. But then they did an anime adaptation of that creator's works in general that included Giant Robo, and basically it's like a growing up story for a boy that's also extremely anti-war. And it has this very old school style of pacing as well, with really old school designs and an old school way of like presenting themes really directly in your face. And that's what this show reminded me a lot of, where it's kind of like, hey, here's the theme, or like with the whole thing with North Number 2 and Duncan. It's like this really slow paced, really built up, lot of repetition. Of what's going on, but that's like the style. The style is to keep repeating it so that it's sort of like, kind of, for lack of a better word, like beats the point into you, so you truly get it. Like I remember the opening of Giant Robo, like they explained 3 different occasions in a row that the Tazuma drive exists in the world and has solved the energy crisis. They say this 3 times in the opening because they really want you to know the energy crisis is over. Tazuma saved us all. And, but that the crux of the show obviously is that that's a lie, and there's all these other things going on. But they really want you to know that as well with North Number 2. He really doesn't want a war. He wants to learn piano.
He wants to be an artist.
And that's it's an old school style that I would not be expecting in 2023, but it makes for interesting pacing as a Netflix show, because you are kind of expected to sort of binge it all at once. Whereas, like, for example, Giant Robo, those are OVAs that were released over the course of a decade. There's 7 episodes that took a decade to release. Like every few years, another episode released. So like this pacing where you're streaming it all at once, it kind of works. Giant Robo was a commercial failure because of its pacing and how long it took to come out. So whereas from what I could tell, Pluto was a huge success, and maybe many people considered it to be the new bar is set for Netflix anime.
Wow.
Which,
like it had high praise, which is one of the biggest reasons why I wanted to watch it myself.
I didn't look into that purposefully to see like what the reception was from the public, so it's interesting to hear you say that. North Number 2 pisses me off sometimes for a robot.
Sarah is really funny watching it with Sarah.
I was like, you know what? This robot doesn't fucking listen. What the fuck?
Sarah was like, get away from...
Don't touch my fucking piano.
Stop touching his piano.
I don't know how many times I gotta tell you, bro.
Get another piano.
Don't
Stop touching his
touch
one.
my piano. And this robot, like, I thought the whole point of the robots is they're supposed to fucking listen to you. And this one just doesn't listen.
He keeps saying, I'm sorry, I won't do that.
He doesn't listen. And he does the exact opposite of what's requested of him. He says, please go away. He doesn't go away. Please don't ask me questions. Please don't do this. Don't touch my piano. Don't fucking do this. Make my fucking tea the way I want it. He's like, he does everything wrong. So I don't know. I don't know what's up with this robot, but he was pissing me off. Honestly, robot or human, if I tell you don't touch my shit, don't touch my shit. To be honest. And he was so insistent. Like, it was ridiculous.
Well, he had something to say to him. Like, he
I don't care. I don't care what you have to say.
Understand something about his childhood.
I literally don't care.
Okay, so Sarah's stance on this is that robots should act like robots and not people.
I would be pissed if it was a person too. I don't care if I tell you, like, don't touch my shit. Like, don't touch it. Like, it's not.
I mean, that's fair.
Negotiable.
I mean, there is a point of view where it's like, hey, leave the old man alone. You're his caretaker.
Just leave him alone.
Just
also,
do what
you're
he
there
asks.
to do a job. Like, I don't know. Like,
I get thematically what they're doing. Thematically, I get what they're doing. They're both trying to figure out ways to recover from their traumas together. That's the point of that entire little enclosed story. And like they're trying to lead each other towards that. So cool. That's fine. It is just funny that, because I think it's, again, this is kind of the old school type of storytelling where this type of like moral insistence that North Number 2 is having, and to try to like lead Duncan towards something better, is like, in modern times would be considered basically harassment. Like, stop doing that. Like,
it would be really creepy.
Yeah,
like, oh, you're watching me sleep. He's like, oh, I watch you sleep and you're humming this thing. And it's like, why are you watching me sleep? The fuck? Like, I don't know. Like, it's just really creepy and weird. And it's not endearing as I think they were maybe trying to come across as. Like, oh, it's cute. Like, he's just trying to learn piano and he's wanting to help this old man figure out, you know, his demons and his PTSD and his traumas, and he's just trying to be there for him. And I'm like, I don't find this endearing at all. I find it really creepy and weird. But that's just me. And then at the end, you know, the older composer gentleman does find a place in his heart for North number 2.
He starts to love the robot.
Yeah.
Right. Like, I feel like the part where it pays off for me is where North number 2 says, like, look, dude, humans can forget things, but this thing you shouldn't. Like, there are good things. Like, this is the one thing that you shouldn't forget. I don't get to forget shit.
Yeah, he has the opposite problem. He remembers every single horrific murder he has ever committed, and
exactly.
He
like,
get it out.
Him
of his
pointing
head,
that out to someone, it's like, yeah, that's nice. Like,
which though is, I'm sorry, like, from a world building perspective, is also contradictory because okay, so for just to go back a little bit, so you're going back to the investigation. In the course of that, the drug addict guy running away, he kills a robot police officer, right? And the robot police officer, first of all, it's amazing that he managed to kill a robot police officer. Apparently, that's a huge deal because apparently robots are supposed to have amazing reflexes. That should not have happened. But it turns out it's because the robot was distracted. He saw a little figure in the distance jumping from skyscraper to skyscraper. That's why he was distracted. But the robot died. So he goes to the robot's wife. And he asks the wife, listen, I know you're going through a hard time. Would you like me to erase his memories from your brain so that you don't have to think about this anymore? And she's like, hell no, I don't want you to do that. But that proves, though, that it's possible.
I mean, you could, yeah.
But it is possible, isn't it?
But then I guess what that could mean is that maybe from North's perspective, he doesn't want to delete the memories out of guilt. Like, he feels guilty and feels like he needs to remember them. In order to... Yeah,
because what's the alternative? You delete those memories and everyone tells you murdered everyone.
Right, yeah. So
that doesn't change the history or what everyone knows you for.
Can he delete just the emotional part where he feels super bad?
Judging from what I've seen in the show further along, I don't think so.
Okay. So wait, are we all agreeing here that robots have emotions in this world?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that is absolutely true.
The construction of this show is that they do. I'm not saying philosophically in the real world for sure. I'm just saying in this show for sure.
Yeah, in this show, it's supposed to be a given that robots feel things.
So for all intents and purposes, they have emotions, emotional intelligence,
and even the gay sex
dreams.
What's his name? I can't remember how to say his name. Detective man.
Gesicht.
So Gesicht, he gets tired and he also wants to like take breaks.
Well, isn't it like a thing where he's like, I think I'm tired. I don't know if he actually feels it, but he's like, should I? Like, I don't know if they're just going through the motions of like, I should feel guilty. I should feel tired. I should feel bad.
So that's an interesting point you bring up, though. I think the more advanced the robots are, the more they do feel like humans. Because there's the wife again, going back to the robot wife. She does say, well, I go through the motions of things I'm supposed to do as a human. Like, I make tea. I serve the tea. I can drink it, but nothing matters. That I don't need tea.
Well, she's like, I don't know why humans find this comforting.
But she says she goes through the motions to kind of better understand what it may be like to be a human. But notably, she's an older model. I think it sort of implies that as the robots got more and more advanced, they just became more and more human-like.
Yeah.
And they're starting to, and part of that comes to the motions.
Just because something happens to you, right? Like, there's this bigger question. Just because something happens to you or you do something doesn't mean that you're going to feel the same way emotionally about it. Like, even humans don't feel that way. Like, we all vary. Like, there are serial killers out there that, okay, it's a given in society that if you kill somebody,
Mhm.
you should feel bad. You should feel guilty. You should
Mhm.
feel scared,
Mhm.
right? These are things that you're like assumed somebody would feel. But there are humans that kill people and they feel happy. They like
Well,
it goes against
There's literally
what
a
you're
robot in the
expecting.
show that we saw that is like that. Is Brow. Brow
And it was
loved killing that.
terrifying.
He loved killing that guy. You know, like he.
Right.
So-
and I guess it's interesting that, you know, I guess it is interesting that they're showing that not only are the robots feeling emotions, but you would think that they would be programmed in a way to feel emotions in a more traditional way. Like if you kill somebody at war, like North Number 2, if you kill tens of thousands of other robots, you should be traumatized. You should
Which
feel
he is.
bad. He is, yeah. And you should have bad dreams about it. But then, like, maybe we'll see some exceptions to that where, like, maybe there is more depth to that.
I think it's more of like, you know, no one programmed a human to feel trauma from a traumatic event emotionally, right? I think it's the same thing. No one programmed the robots to feel trauma and these harsh emotions, but they were created as AI, and as a result of it just advancing through their living,
But
these emotions
it's through
form.
nurture, right? I mean, the same thing is for humans. Like,
Yeah.
there's the nature versus nurture thing. Like, innately, we
Part of it's
can
nature,
feel
though, too.
emotions, but it's kind of like your environment and your experiences that kind of paint how you deal and feel certain emotions off of certain experiences, like killing someone. Do I feel guilty? Me as a person, it would destroy my life. I'm very certain of that. I would feel horrible, guilty, terrible. I don't think I'd say the same thing for, I don't know, Charles Manson or, you know, Ed Gein.
Oh, he loved
or
it.
something. You know, like there's different motivations and different experiences and I don't know. I just find that fascinating. But when you put that into like a robot's perspective and that they're created by humans and programmed by humans, you would think like what aspect?
Like that's the part that this show is politely asking you never to think about.
Yeah, like if you're programmed and made by humans, would you be programmed more like the idealistic way of thinking, or is there a way to vary off of that path based on your experience?
So
I don't
for
know. There's
me-
just a lot of questions.
So for me, I don't think that's an issue at all because I have a minor background in computer science and like neural networking and whatnot. And even modern like computer algorithms, they're all black boxes. We don't know exactly how they work. Like, for example, the YouTube algorithm, we don't actually quite know how it works.
I don't like that.
All we know is that we sort of
I don't like
created
this.
a big neural net, decided to feed it a bunch of inputs and trained it that these inputs should lead to these outputs, but we don't know how it's doing it.
Mhm.
And a complex robot, you know, like a North Number 2 would feel probably also be a black box. Like we need it to have certain inputs and certain outputs. It needs to be a machine of war, but we never accounted for the fact that on the inside created this trauma in this robot. And I think that's, to
But
me,
the response to that trauma is unknown.
what do you mean the response to that?
In North Number 2, we know that North Number 2 killing hundreds of thousands of robots has created a guilt PSD complex. But what if it didn't? What if it created like a joy and like, I
could
want to
have.
go out and kill? Like, we don't know that. We can't control that.
It could have. Well,
Although that is like a
That's
potential
terrifying.
question you could ask, this show does not play around with that possibility. It doesn't try to go into like the potential sinister anti-personality that a robot might have. It's
Mm.
more about like, what is it that allows humans to kill each other? And how terrifying is it when a robot finally gains that? It's about robots becoming so human that they can kill each other the way humans do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess it's a philosophical examination of
It
what
isn't about
leads-
becoming a crazy genocidal maniac. It's about becoming hateful enough to want to kill something.
Yeah, what in a human it can justify murder to a human? What makes it think it can do that? A human can do that, and then now a robot has learned that.
Oh boy, that's a dangerous game.
Right.
No.
But then it's because they're human enough to reason themselves to that point, right? And so,
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's the terrifying bit about it.
Look, humans are scary. I don't like humans, most humans. So
That's probably a wise way to live life.
Although, you know what? This also applies to all animals. Like, no matter how cute cats are, when they get into a cat fight, you think, how is this even possible? You're so cute.
Oh, yeah.
Both of you.
Yeah.
Both of you are absolutely adorable, and you both want to kill each other.
It's like, no sense. Have you ever seen, you've seen Grizzly Man, right, Sarah?
No.
You've never seen Grizzly Man? Oh, we should watch Grizzly Man.
No, but I know.
No, but there's a quote in it that Werner Herzog has, which I always thought was really poignant. Because, Timothy Treadwell, he saw these bears as like cute and cuddly and like having these personalities, and like he could interact with them and he gained their trust, etc. And then Werner Herzog was like, actually, when I see a bear, all I see is cold, distant hunger. At the end of the day, this is a large animal thinking about its next meal. And you can try to project all of your emotions and maybe whatever you want. And maybe some of it's even real, They aren't likely very intelligent creatures. I think
it's complex.
Yeah, but he was like, at the end of the day, you can't just treat this bear as a friend. Like,
no, but even your friends would probably eat you if they're faced with enough hunger. You know what I mean? Like,
no, there's some people who would never eat another person no matter what.
I don't, Marvin. You've definitely. I mean, if
there's been survival stories where people literally died.
Hey, this conversation would be going very differently if Ricardo were here.
and there's many that have eaten each other. Donner Party. You know what I mean? Like,
but those are pointed out as being exceptional. There's a lot of survival stories where they didn't do that. That's true. And they died.
When animals are faced with their basic needs being met, us included, I think you never know what's going to happen, right?
Oh, yeah.
I feel like I've even heard you say on occasion, Sarah, where I could never eat someone even if I was dying.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to say never, because again, animals do crazy things.
We got it on record.
Myself included. I don't know what I'm going to do if faced with extreme hunger. It's life or death. I hope and pray I will never be in that position ever in my life, but I don't know. People do crazy things when under extreme stress, and again, if I died and my cats needed food, I would invite them to please eat me. You know what I mean? Like that's they're animals; they need to eat. So,
do you remember Survivor Man? That show on Discovery. It was like the precursor to Bear Grylls, because he was an actual survivalist. His name Les Stroud. He's actually done survivalist things before. Mm-hmm. And during the pandemic, because they can't make TV anymore, he did like remote things for GQ magazine. Okay. And basically what he did was he would like watch a survival movie and sort of give an analysis on it of how realistic it is or what they should have done, etc. Right. And one of them was about the plane crash in the Alps where they started eating each other, right? For survival.
Yeah.
And he paused the video and he was like, okay, before we continue any further, I know there's a lot of people who have criticized this group for eating each other. And I just want to tell you that you guys have never been in this situation before. You have no idea what it's like. No one is in a position to judge these people for what they have to go through.
I agree with that. I would never judge anybody who was put in a position like that if they were forced to eat another person. I think that's an extremely unfortunate, like the Donner Party, all of those things. It's incredibly sad. And look, I find it incredibly disturbing, but I definitely don't blame people if they're put in a position to like have to,
Yeah. I mean, for the Donner Party, I blame their stubbornness for attempting to take this route. But once they were there,
there was children and people who didn't want to be there, Yeah.
And once they were there and they had to survive, like they had to do it to some degree. Otherwise they would, they literally exhausted they were eating bark off of trees and shit. They were eating their shoes. They ate everything. They could not eat anything further. And they even made arrangements with each other where they were like, okay, if we have to eat someone, the family is not presented with their body because that would be cruel. So they had all these like arrangements where they were like,
sure.
And it was like, they weren't like killing people to eat them. It was like, well, they died.
Yeah, well, of course. And yeah.
So there was a whole thing.
You never know. And like, there's these really sad stories like, like I saw this one headline. I don't know if you guys saw this, but it's really disturbing. But there's this one headline where like, I forgot a country in Africa, they sanctioned the killing of like 100 elephants because the country is facing such extreme famine that the government like ordered a number of elephants to be killed to provide food to people but that's how extreme hunger and food is becoming, is like there's these like very decisive measures and killings happening across the world.
It was Zimbabwe and Namibia.
Yeah.
Okay, forgive me, but how did we get here? Why are we talking about this at length right now? I'm trying to remember.
We got on a tangent and we're just
I think
here.
it's just the nature of like, what do we consider acceptable for death, right? And like to cause death. And these are some reasons where I guess.
And death to others and people, human, non-human, and processing and compartmentalizing trauma too. Like,
quick question. So when that guy killed the police robot, is he going to jail? Is that all? Is he like, is there like a whole thing?
I would imagine you'd go to jail.
Yeah. I mean, Okay.
So
he already committed a crime.
Okay. So but was the crime because it's specifically related to the fact that
like it was a drug-related crime, and he assaulted the robot in defense, trying to get off from being, arrested for the drug-related crime.
Because I wonder if in this world it would carry the same weight as killing a human.
I would imagine it would.
I'm not sure if they address that in this show.
Okay.
However, I do think that there would be some sort of punishment involved, even though they treat the body like scrap.
Okay.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, that's how he even gets that chip to show the memories to his wife.
Yeah, like
which is kind of crazy because why isn't there a protocol for that? It seemed like this guy was just like taking out the fucking trash and it was like, oh, whatever.
Yeah, there is a bit of like weird ambivalent feelings about this because it's like, yes, robots have rights, but they're still clearly second-class citizens, which, is realistic too in a way.
Yeah.
But it's very clear that not everyone is on the same page about this.
Yeah, and because it's interesting because in this instance with the robot police officer, Robbie, I guess it was his name, right? They weren't like, oh, please return the body to the next of kin, his wife, so that she can know what to do, make arrangements, etc. Whereas for Mont Blanc, like Mont Blanc originally, his creator was like, oh, even Mont Blanc said, don't save my body, like melt it down, which implied before they would have saved his body and done something with it.
So like with people, popularity and celebrity matter.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, when Mont Blanc died, I mean, you got people crying. There's
yeah, because he did so much for so many people, but a constable bot's just a pig.
I guess so. I mean, I guess robot or not, we kind of push these.
A pig with a wife at home, but
yeah, we push these same opinions, I guess, of class. There's class, I guess, and order of importance of like, hey, you're a popular celebrity robot, or you're not. How do
people feel about the wife doing pretty much a data lol memory download?
I think it's odd.
It's weird, but
I think to me the weird part was that she hadn't requested for the body to begin with, which
that is a weird thing
to me. Suggested that that's not considered normal in this world. Like it's considered standard procedure for a robot body to just be disposed of.
I don't feel like it is normal. I don't even know if.
But they were just they were like, well, the forensics are done, so we're just dumping the body. So
this guy was like literally throwing it in the trash. Yeah.
And I think that's partly it. I think it's because, like we said earlier, the more advanced robots get, the more human they act and feel. And so for a long time, the robots in this society did not feel anything when they were treated in that way. And so everyone in this society got used to treating robots in this way. And robots are now, or like certain robots are advanced enough to feel injustice about this.
And they're rebelling.
So there you go.
Okay. So you could even say that's like a potential like social carryover of how they're treating robot bodies. And now there's
like the fact that if you recall how Gesicht reacted when he said like, yeah, it's scrap anyway. And like how he like his eyes widened, he like remembered something.
Yeah.
Yeah. We keep saying we don't know what that flashback is yet. So
that's a very important bit that becomes more prominent later.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It's clear that there is a divide between like older model robots who are more like servicing type don't think or question too much.
Right. There's a common question that is given to, or like oftentimes when robots are introduced to each other in this world, they seem to say like what model they are, as though there should be a library or catalog somewhere where you could look that up and like, find out what the deal is with this model if you want.
Yeah, and that maybe
Which is why whenever it's a child, I'm like, weird. But,
But maybe that kind of determines like how sentient you are and
that's kind of it too.
What level of emotional intelligence you have, where like the detective, I mean, he kind of can almost pass as a human.
And often does.
And actually, this actually ties into like the next episode is actually, for me personally, what got me hooked into the show. Second episode is where I saw when Adam comes into the scene and he is portrayed as the most advanced robot in the world as far as emotions are concerned. Like he's the most human acting robot there is.
Okay.
And well, the positive version of that, I guess I should say.
What does that mean when you say that? What most human acting robot there is? Like what does that look like?
He actually thinks things are delicious. He actually like uses the restroom. He like acts and he does everything that a normal boy would with the addition of robot powers.
Is it because he's programmed to, or is it because he has a biological need to?
It's because his brain is advanced enough to just operate in that manner.
Because we use the bathroom because we biologically have to. Right? Like,
yeah, but if we lose like feeling in our lower part of our body, for example, we no longer feel the need to go to the bathroom.
But you're going to go to the bathroom.
I think this is also more based on an older idea of how the mind worked. Back in the day, there was an older theory of mind and body where it was considered pretty distinct, separate things. Now we know better. We know that the body really is part of the mind. Like you can't separate the two, really.
Right.
So I think this is more based on that older notion of that, like there's a sci-fi thing of, I could just take your brain out and put it in a robot. And we now know that's pretty much impossible. You can't do that. That would fundamentally alter who you are as a person, not just the body. Yeah. So.
Right. Like this is a very unscientific like view of advancement in robotics. It's just like, I guess in shorthand, you could just say Astro Boy or Adam is the most emotionally intelligent robot there is.
Okay. In that sense, we can say, I think we can have a clear theme of, or not theme, but like at least ongoing storytelling structure of advancement in robotics correlates with emotional growth and how strongly you feel emotions and stuff. That seems to be sort of the crux we're getting at here.
Yeah, I think so.
But like, is it what you're really feeling, or is it what you're programmed to feel? Do you get what I'm saying?
Are you really feeling anything, Sarah?
I'm about to say that you could say the same thing about humans, because if you put a certain amount of a certain drug in a human, they will start feeling a different way as well. So are your feelings just the way you're feeling, or are they just chemicals? Same thing.
I mean, you hear certain words and you're offended. Like, how natural is that?
Yeah, chemistry
Are you
is just
programmed to feel that way because you heard those words?
Yeah, chemistry is a different type of organic programming, essentially. So, I mean,
I don't know. I mean, honestly, there are chemicals in my body that make me feel a certain way. And when those chemicals stop going through my body, there is a moment where you're kind of like, I was under the influence of these chemicals, and that's not really me. So
what is really you?
I don't know. That's the existential question. I don't know.
It's the question these robots have as well.
But also, I think what is me is the summary of all of my experiences is why I think maybe something tastes delicious, or I find something pleasurable or not pleasurable or offensive, or, I mean, isn't that, I guess the same could be said for a robot experiencing life, and that's informing whether they think something is delicious or cool or fun or grow hatred for something.
The entirety of this show is just us watching what happens when a bunch of robots who were created for a purpose, get sent to war, come back, and, try to either resume that purpose or try to figure out what to do next.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like...
I mean, North Number 2 is a big example of that.
Yeah, so this is one of those things where it's like, well, yeah, you are programmed a certain way, but experience and the world and life has done this to you beyond that. And so what are you like now?
Yeah, I mean, that would be kind of interesting if we like technology got to a point where like, say we wake up tomorrow and they're just like, hey, we've all decided that money isn't a thing anymore, you know? Like you don't have to work or, you know, it's just, I don't know. It like, would that change your purpose and how you do things? So like, I feel like sometimes I was born and put on earth to be on this like hamster wheel of like, I wake up, go to work, get money, pay bills, go to bed, wake up, do it again, all over again. And then that's the point of life, right? You just pay your bills and hope things are okay. And then you die. But like, what if you woke up tomorrow and someone's like, hey, this whole structure that you kind of dedicate a lot of time in your life for is no longer. I don't know. How would
It's also a
that
very
change
Star
us?
Trek question, because Star Trek is also
Like, how would that change us? You
This
know,
whole
if
show is
someone-
a Star Trek episode.
question. Yeah.
or like, I guess I'm trying to connect it in a way. Like, if these robots were made for this war to kill people and well, not to kill people, to kill other robots, I guess.
Mhm.
And the war is over, then what happens? What is their purpose after
Dan
that?
is pondering something.
You mentioning the war again just reminded me of like the one translation bit that I noticed that actually is better in the original version than it was in the English.
Oh, okay.
But I just want to point out to you guys because I think it might be a bit that you missed because of the way you watched it.
Mhm.
Where North number 2 says, I decimated, so however many robots. He said that in your version. In the Japanese version, he says, I neutralized a bunch of robots. No, my fellow robots, my nakama, like my comrades. I destroyed my kind. And so that was like the correction he made.
Instead of decimation, it was like,
yeah, it wasn't it wasn't like correction, I completely murdered them all. No, it was more like correction, I murdered my friends.
I betrayed my own kind.
Yeah, so that's like the big emphasis on that. So
Okay, that is a pretty big difference in my opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but like there's that purpose is like he was created for that purpose, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean,
what happens when you don't agree with that purpose and what happens when you no longer serve that purpose?
I think like part of the story for the Paul Duncan part, Paul Duncan, right? That's his name? Paul Duncan, I think. Yeah. Like, because Paul Duncan is the non-believer. He's the one who constantly goes, I believe in nothing that's artificial. So like you, even though you keep telling me you want to learn this piano, but you're just a dog of war, blah, blah, blah. There's a reason why I never put in artificial eyes, because I don't believe in fake shit. All this fake shit is not real. Like, I fuck these synthesizers, piano all the way. Fucking robots can't learn shit. And part of them commiserating together at the end is him realizing there is more subtlety to this robot than just what he was programmed for. And I think that's the thesis of that portion, is that robots can change. And even if they're programmed to have to do a certain thing, and even a stubborn person like Paul Duncan can be sort of convinced of that. So I think that's sort of why they put that up the front. I have
a really
a feeling,
long way to say that to make.
but I think that's going to inform the rest of the show, probably, where it's going to be about robots trying to like stray away from what their intended purposes were and trying to find their own meaning, because for him, he just he decided to find the joy in music instead.
Yeah, well, like North number 2 is like the outlier here because, again, he was the one who was designed for war, whereas the other greatest robots that were participating in the war weren't designed just for combat. Right. 2 of them are like wrestlers. Yeah,
I read that. They're like
2 of them are like wrestlers.
Fighters,
one of them's a detective. One of them is like an energy like guy. And like none of them are built specifically for war. And of course, Mont Blanc is just like nature guy. So
I mean, is it weird of me that although you're describing, these robots that kind of want to be more than their purpose, their intended purpose, and all of this, like, they have feelings and emotional depth and intelligence and thoughts.
Well, actually, the point that I was getting at with that was that North number 2 is like the only one who is really going through that particular struggle of trying to fight who he is normally.
Oh,
so
okay.
You don't think that's not happening across?
For everyone else, it's PTSD, standard. Like it isn't. It's not. I was built to fight, and I don't want to do it anymore. That's very Mega Man. It is. I came back from a war, and it fucked me up. I have this going on now. What do we do? Also, people are trying to kill us.
Okay. I would have actually thought this would be a theme moving forward. Interesting. I would have thought that so this is the thing that came up, because I know who Pluto is based on Astro Boy. Pluto is just one of the main villains. So I thought my conception of Pluto was that the villain Pluto was created to do something, and him murdering is his way of rebelling against his purpose. That was like my headcanon. I was like, okay, so now we have North number 2. North number 2 is rebelling against his purpose by finding a different purpose. And it's just music. He just wants to be a musician. And I thought maybe Pluto would have a different purpose in mind, or was created for a different purpose. And then he's like, fuck that. The way I rebel is by murder. Like the only way I could break out of, maybe like he had a really controlling professor or something, and this professor made him do this. And the only way he could break away from it was to kill that professor. And then he goes, wait, I can solve my problems and get to do what I want by killing. And that's why he gains. This is my headcanon of what I thought the story could have gone into. And I thought this was supposed to be like an encapsulation of that theme, but you're telling me it's not. So I think that's interesting.
Yeah, actually, now that I think about it, the show does. Well, I mean, the serial killer does their work. So
they serial kill.
Yeah, they serially kill. And so it's not like you're spending all of this time with each individual of these greatest robots. You spend some time with. I
thought that's what that was going to be. I thought,
but it wasn't. It isn't just like each robot has their own struggle to be more than themselves. Like it isn't about that. No,
I thought each robot was going to get its own little story like this. And
actually, it gets a little more complicated and more very blatant, or very more and more overtly like anti-war. War is bad. War is bad.
I mean, I need an opinion here, because does it make me a bad person?
Yes.
Yeah. You're a bad person because you're a human.
Okay.
You're a bad person. You're okay. Let me see if I can predict this question. Does it make you a bad person to say, who the fuck cares? These are robots.
Yes, exactly. Dan read my mind. Thank you.
Got it in one.
Honestly though, like I'm like, it's cute that you want to learn piano, but you're not human. Like, I'm sorry, you just don't have the same emotional.
This goes back to Sarah's stop touching my piano.
Yeah, I feel like that piano thing really got really got to you.
It did. Really got but also, like, you learn, okay, but like, there's this human side, right? So we have the composer, right? You learn this whole real background of his mom, his siblings, the song, the melody that's coming into his head. It's a very loaded emotional experience for this man.
Well, no siblings. I don't think he had any siblings. I think it was just him and his mom.
I thought he said growing up there was, or somebody. There was towns, I don't know.
When he was at the boarding school, they beat him up a lot. That's the closest to other children. There's
this whole backstory. And that holds emotional weight to and informs the art he is creating, which is why we as humans like to consume and enjoy art created by humans for humans. You know what I mean? Like I'm very strongly pro like enjoying art that's been created by humans. I
feel like we're starting to get into I feel like I need to reiterate that the AI in this world are nothing like the AI in our world.
This is not generative AI. Yeah.
It's like we are in a world where
it's still asking us to the audience is not different. Netflix knows who we are, they know what we're going through. They're at the forefront of it. So it's interesting that they
So in that case, Sarah, are you just inherently skeptical of all signs of computers showing personality and thought for themselves? Like signs of life, autonomy.
Yeah, I mean, I am because and also like.
So why do you hate Data?
Well, it's asking
she likes
me
Data because Data has a cat. That's why.
Yeah. Well, it's asking me like it's not why do I hate them? It's like how much am I supposed to care? Like that's kind of more the question. It's like,
did we ever watch Measure of a Man with you? Did you ever watch it with us?
Maybe not.
Yeah, I did. I watched Measure of a Man. I mean, I understand, and I'm very pro data, and I understand, but again, at the same time, it's not like.
Well, in Measure of a Man, did you think that Data had the right to self-autonomy instead of?
It's not about do they have the right. It's like, how am I supposed to care? Like, how much am I supposed to care? That's more the question that I'm asking myself. It's like,
you have to care if you think they have rights.
Well, like all these robots came back from with PTSD. Like how, I don't know. I mean, this is why I started the question, am I a bad person? I don't know.
No, I don't think you're a bad person.
I literally don't know how much I'm supposed to care about a robot having PTSD from killing other robots.
I think in your head you have two different ideas of machines that aren't reconciling. To me, this is a weird analogy, but I think this is the same as you unable to eat a chicken that you saw get killed, but you'll eat chicken nuggets all day. I think it's that type of thing.
Chicken nuggets all day.
Well, you will eat like chicken strips and like stuff. Like you won't have a problem eating that.
Like there are versions of chicken you can accept without question.
Sure, distance is fine.
I think that's the thing you're seeing right now. I think it's a similar thing where you have one conception of a friendly robot that you're cool with having autonomy and others, and then you have weird robots in the show. And they're supposed to have these emotions, and you're like, but I just don't see it. And they're just not meshing. And I think part of it also is that this show is just asking you to accept. It's not a philosophical question in the show, whether they have emotions.
Yeah, it's not a philosophical question.
And I think my mind keeps going there, right? And it's just not. That's
the
not
show. The show just wants you to accept these guys have emotions. What do we do with that? That's all. It's not like a philosophical question of. This is not do androids dream of electric sheep. It's just androids do dream of electric sheep. What do we do about that? That's all. So I think that's the central crux of what's going on.
When Paul Duncan notices North number 2 like moaning in his sleep and having a nightmare himself, he's like, "Oh shit, I didn't know they did that."
Yeah,
like
they have dreams.
So so it's like an ongoing like increasing understanding that robots are becoming more human-like, or that robots can be more.
This
emotional.
goes into the question of, like, for me, would you stay tuned thing? Because I ask myself, like, how much am I supposed to care?
That's a good point. So I guess we could ask that now. Like, would you stay? I mean, for Dan, I think the question is obvious. He did stay tuned. He watched the whole thing. What about you, Sarah? What do you think?
Well, I feel like this show is asking me to care, right? Like that, it's telling me this is the world. This is the reality.
But would you stay tuned to it as a show?
I don't. Well,
It's okay to say no. You can say no.
You're
allowed.
I don't even know if this is allowed on this podcast, but I feel like I would stay tuned if I was watching it with other people.
I think I've said that.
No, you could say that.
I said that about
that's
The
totally
Sopranos.
valid. That's totally valid.
I think that's what I said about The Sopranos.
Yeah.
I wouldn't stay tuned if I was watching it by myself, because to me, I can't get past, at this point in my life, the question of like, why do I care? Why do I care about these robots who have PTSD? Because it's not possible for them to have it, and I don't care about them. They're not people. They're not real.
Wait, these are actual thoughts you're having then? That they don't have PTSD, and the PTSD they're telling you they have isn't real? Like, is that actually a thought you're having?
Well, I just don't care.
We had the same conversation as we were watching The Creator. This was a movie that our friend worked on.
I have to care about something to continue to watch it, and I just don't care. Like that's the problem in my head. That's why I'm trying to get past it, and I can't. And I'm having a hard time getting past it because I know in this world
you're just a robot racist.
Yeah, in this world they're telling me no, they're equals, they're fine. They have PTSD, they have these emotions, these dreams, these aspirations, and we should care. And there are laws.
But that fucker kept touching that piano.
But he kept fucking touching my shit, and I told him not to.
So he doesn't deserve human rights.
But like on a like I get it, it's fictional, whatever, like, but like on a very personal level, I find myself asking, like, why would I continue watching this? And like, I literally, in my real life, I don't care.
And in that case, what it can usually come down to when it comes to that sort of thing is like, well, I just didn't end up caring about these characters. You could just say that.
I don't. Yeah, because in my real life, I don't care about AI or robots. Like, I do not think they have emotional feelings or intelligence.
And where Data managed to develop some buy-in for you in whatever way he did, because he did. He managed to get past this barrier that you're putting up here.
He did. Data did, yes. I'm not saying it's not possible. It is possible. Data did it in Star Trek Next Generation, for sure. I do care about Data. He's one of my favorite characters. So in that case,
it might just be that, certain things are... what you would consider compelling about a character wasn't present in these robots.
Yes, I would agree with that.
And so you weren't made to care about these robots, and therefore, their plights are not important to you.
At least not in this pilot episode, because that's the premise of this podcast, is going based off of the pilot episode. Now, if I got past it, maybe I would be saying something completely different if I watched episode 2 and 3.
Yeah, and I had a bit of a roller coaster myself watching this, because I got through episode 1. I was like, parts of that I liked a lot. And I actually, like you guys, I thought the second part dragged on a bit when I first saw it. But then when I tried to first think of it only as a single episode, it's like, I don't know, it's a little up in the air here. But me knowing Pluto's reputation as a series, and of course its release as a whole season at once, they expect you to just ingest as much of this as possible at a time. And so with that in mind,
it's expected to be auto-played. It's expected for you to not even touch the controller.
Yeah, just let it run like a big old movie. And so with that in mind, I thought well, I do still want to know what the deal is with this series. I just wanted to know what the series was about. I was going to watch it either way, but episode 2 is where I saw hooks that really got me. And by the end of it, the conclusion of it is where I had to realize, oh, right, this is still the old story. Despite its new wrappings, it is still the old story, and I have to deal with that.
So. Yeah, and I'm coming into this as a reminder, is I have no context for this story, the written aspect of it, Astro Boy, and I know nothing. So I don't even know what Pluto is referencing other than the planet, or formerly known as planet.
No, honestly, I don't think that this show was... Yeah, I would have been surprised if you were really into this show personally, because I don't think this would normally be in your wheelhouse.
I enjoyed it. I just think I would probably only I would only stay tuned if I was watching it with Marvin or you as a group. On my own, probably not.
I think this show benefits a lot from some research and context.
Yes.
Yeah.
I will say the show is absolutely beautiful, though. I love the way it looks.
It's interesting because
it's beautiful. Everything about it is amazing. I do like that.
It's got that old school anime drawing style, but it's combined with very, very sometimes a little not that great looking to me modern CG, which I'm this doesn't look that great. But there's a lot of really, really, and particularly the Paul Duncan stuff, a lot of the rotoscoping is extremely good, especially from when they're playing the piano. From a technical perspective, that looks really good.
Right.
And there's a lot of stuff that's really enjoyable about that from a technical perspective. I think personally, I would only stay tuned because it was the Netflix format, like you were saying. If it didn't have that stinger at the end where he meets Adam.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
I don't think I would. I'd been like, okay, well, I'm done, I guess. And I don't think I would have continued. And if it didn't autoplay, because part of it to me, this is going to be a really pedantic thing to make a big deal about. But Sarah and I were both kind of laughing at it and we couldn't help it. The part where it's supposed to be a very emotional moment. North number 2 visits Bohemia, comes back with the folk song and sings it for Paul Duncan. But the way he sings it, when he goes, oh, with his mouth like that, we could not stop laughing.
It's terrible. Yeah. For a robot, you could sound amazing, and he sounded terrible.
I was like, play it on the piano. This whole thing was about a piano. Played on the piano. It really
should have been on the piano.
Why did you?
I think I think as it was written, it was intended to be more poignant as a sung song because it was how he used to actually
with his mom,
engage with it. But
then have his voice sound good. good. Like he sounded,
and I think
awful.
from the technical perspective, because I know what they were trying to do. They did the poetic thing where it then crossfaded with his mom humming it, and it became. But because of the deep timbre of his voice combined with her higher pitch, it was like a comical crossfade. Like it sounded funny. Like it wasn't as poetic. And I think it could have been poetic if he did it on the piano, playing at the same pitch as her, just on a different instrument. I think that could have made it technically sound more poetic, but just the way he did it, it ended up like, and that would have, if we didn't then not have the Astro Boy moment at the end, at the Atom moment, I would have been like, okay, well, I saw this, I guess, and I would probably just close it, maybe think about it, but I might not return. It's really the Netflix format that sort of would compel people to keep going. I think, honestly, it's the fact that it's sort of automatically going anyway.
I think like the goofiness of him singing that thing is very typical of anime, though.
Yeah.
Like goofy bits like that especially involving like a cappella singing. It's just something that is common in anime, I think, and I think that often is a symptom of the way production is done. Music is usually very, very separate from everything. Yeah, and the voice actors.
And the music is often considered immutable. Like it's interesting how in America the relationship between a composer and like a director, at best it's a symbiotic relationship, a partnership. At worst, the director just tells the composer what to do. Whereas in Japan, the composer is in full control of the music and kind of just does what they want and gives it to the show. And then the show figures out what to do with it from there. So it's like the other way around almost. So that's sort of part of the reason why sometimes you can have these weird clashes. I mean, one of the most famous examples that Dan and I were recently laughing about is the farting clown noises in the Resident Evil basement. And that's because like that was still during an era where composers were not told what to do. He presented that, and then the Resident Evil team was like, oh, okay, I guess we'll put that in the game.
I feel like there's a lot more like to be said about that particular thing you mentioned.
Well, that I'm not going to go into in general. Yeah. But there is a culture like that. But there is a culture like that. Like if Yoko Kanno gives you a soundtrack, you don't have notes. Like nobody gives her notes.
Yeah, there are interviews with Yoko Kanno where she has said, like, I think of multiple animes where she was like, oh, I was surprised when they used that track I made for that scene.
Yeah,
and that's how she thinks, or that's like how she composes. It's like she's not given scenes to compose to; she just composes music, and then they drop it in. So,
yeah. It's a separate process where they don't try to interfere with each other, which is fascinating.
Yeah, and so with that said, anything that the characters have to sing themselves is often something that they have to like have ready, and it's usually pretty different from what it would be in the final mix of everything. And there's a lot more premeditation that has to happen for it to like come together well. Mm-hmm. And so I think oftentimes it doesn't. And also, so like on my end, it like the goofiness of that singing was something that's like, okay, anime thing. It's just an anime thing. Yeah. I'm getting through this because this is an anime thing.
That's fair. The other thing, this is a weird thing for me to have fixated on, is when he flew away to fight Pluto in the sky.
Why did his legs come off?
Yeah, that's what to say. Yeah, why did his legs come off?
I don't know.
Why did his legs fall off? That made no sense to me.
I don't know why his legs fell off. But yeah, it is kind of weird. It's like, does he make new ones? Or
is that a thing? Is that like a thing?
Does he have to like gingerly like booster himself back to his landing site and like pick up the leg while still floating and insert it back into the socket? And
yeah, I don't know. That also threw me. I was staring at the legs, not at Paul Duncan, because I was like, "Why the fuck did you leave your legs there?"
They just get in the way. He's flying.
He's flying.
We could use your legs for it.
But I would stay tuned under very controlled circumstances, I think.
Right, and I only stayed tuned because of the reputation. I heard of it beforehand. Like I knew enough about it contextually that I felt like I really wanted to see where it all ended up. So
I think also for me, I'm just so spoiled by modern storytelling pacing now. that I often end up having less patience for this type of slower story. I mean, I still have a taste for it every once in a while. Like I still rewatch Giant Robo every once in a while, for example. But I think this type of slower pacing, I tend to sort of have lost the taste for. Like I mentioned Chainsaw Man before. Chainsaw Man has zero filler. Like Chainsaw Man is just important thing to important thing. And important things are like eating a meal at a restaurant, right? But that scene is important, right? Whereas like the style of, especially what the Paul Duncan and North Number 2 idea is that they kind of repeat the same idea over and over again, but each one with a slight progression,
right?
You know, to show a progression. Whereas with Chainsaw Man, it would have just been like, no, here it is. There you go. You're done. Now we're moving to the next point.
Now, honestly, I feel like the pacing of this wouldn't be felt as strongly if the characters themselves were stronger.
That's also true. Yeah.
So I do think that there is a minor weakness to like the characters we're given here as well. So like I'm willing to attribute some of like the lukewarmness to that because like I said, I needed episode 2 to really like lock in. And it's because episode 2 was a lot more like the first half of episode 1. And the first half of episode 1 is what I was into. I want mystery. I want to know what the hell the serial killer is doing. I want to know about like the mysterious past that he keeps remembering or can't remember. Like I want to know about that stuff. I want to know about the robot who killed the human and why he did it. And
I mean, I do too, but then we spent half the episode on North Number 2.
Right. So
pilot,
like
and I think maybe it might have been misplaced a little bit.
I think because it was such a direct adaptation of the manga where a type of interlude like that is totally acceptable compared to
maybe not in a pilot.
Yeah.
Well, and again, I keep coming back to like the Netflix release like model of it. If you binge it and
it's not a big deal. So it's not as big a deal.
Most people aren't really even approaching Netflix series as like, I'm just going to watch one episode of this.
Although some people like Sarah and I do. We do approach it that way.
I do though. I'm still very old school. I don't really binge stuff anymore.
Yeah.
I'm very controlled with my TV
There's
time.
not enough time in the day.
Yeah. You know what? Okay.
I'm too fucking busy, okay? I don't have time to binge things anymore. What is this, 2020?
Yeah. We all got jobs.
We're busy now. We're back to work.
What is this fucking quarantine where we binged all of Luke Cage season 1 in one sitting?
Yeah, I think we did that before quarantine. No,
that was before quarantine. Yeah,
we did.
Yeah.
Squid Game during quarantine.
We did Squid Game.
But it wasn't it wasn't a single. Wait, was it a sitting?
It was a single sitting. Yeah, that was a single sitting
we
as well.
We took a break for food.
Well, Luke Cage too. Luke Cage, we went out to eat at a diner and then we came back.
But anyway, no one has time for that anymore.
Yeah, fuck that.
And if you do have time for that, I'm judging you. Where do you get the time for that?
To be fair, though, last night I did binge 8 episodes of Chainsaw Man in one sitting. So, I mean,
Marvin, what the fuck?
They are 21-minute episodes. They're not like exceptionally long. So,
yeah, I just don't have time. And also, that's a relatively like new-ish concept, I'd say. Like, the whole idea of like binging things, like if we talk about Star,
now, though.
I know it's normal now, but like if we talk about Star Trek, right? Like going back to our other podcast, that was like a weekly show. You'd have to fucking wait, and
I don't think that's a good show to binge. I think binging it really reveals a lot of its flaws really hard.
Yeah, but binging things and having things be released all at once or in groups is kind of like a newer type of style of release. Well, it's old now.
And I think like a show like Pluto treats it more of like, we're just making a long movie that Netflix has told us we need to chop up into these lengths of segments. That's essentially what they're doing. And there are some shows like, let's say like a Cobra Kai, where Cobra Kai kind of actually is episodic. Like it has like specific enclosed episodes that are designed to be their own episodes. But Pluto clearly isn't, right? Pluto is more of like let's just keep going. But
that actually changes the way you make the content.
Yeah, and sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. Kind of famously in the modern time, this is why all of those Marvel Disney Plus shows have been canceled, because they were written originally, all of them, as really long feature-length screenplays, and then they would chop them up into episodes, and they realized these aren't working. Like nobody's watching these the way we want them to, especially because Disney Plus shows, they were also releasing them weekly, and people were like, this pacing's terrible. And it's because it wasn't paced for that. It was paced as a long movie. So it can pay off. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. It's just interesting that if you are the creator of these kinds of shows, the way in which it will be released is very important.
Yeah, and in this case, it's to its benefit. I don't think Pluto would have done well if it came out one episode a week.
Yeah, if this had only released one episode and then stopped for a week and waited for the next week, I don't know if everyone would have remained on board for good.
But that's so fascinating, right? Like, what a departure from the way movies and TV were made, in our parents' generation. Like that, they couldn't understand or even fathom what we're talking about now, right? So,
but the medium is the message, and part of the medium is the platform you deliver on. And
guess what? The future generations will be like, it's not all downloaded in your head instantly. You have to watch things on a TV. What?
It's crazy. It's
not
super
just
slow.
in your mind. That's super
so
slow.
You have to use
wow.
your hands. It's like a baby's toy.
Yeah. I mean, we'll probably sound very ancient to those in the future.
You have to experience things in real time. That's crazy. You can't just watch a thing at 4 times speed and then just slow your perception of reality so that you can experience it that way, but your actual reality around you isn't happening that way. That's crazy.
That's the ultimate.
Talk about old school. Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, that's where we're headed, right? And maybe I'll get killed by a robot. So
killed by an army of Cocos.
Yeah. An army of Cocos will swarm me and beat me to death with their little cute little flags.
Their little antennas. Their little lids will keep popping open and hitting
and then I'll shut up and be like, never mind, I care about you. I take it back. I do care about you and your feelings and your wants to play piano. I'm so sorry.
As the only person who finished the series, I think there's a lot that I like about it, but it's not one that I can recommend to everybody.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think I would recommend this to everybody either. It's not that type of show. Yeah.
Despite what other people have been saying about it.
Well, I think this is anime in general. There tends to be a thing where when people really like anime, they try to say, oh my God, everyone, there was a time where everyone kept saying, oh my God, everyone needs to watch Evangelion. It's no, everyone should not watch Evangelion. It's really not for everyone, it's that.
I think
it's the nature of fans. Yeah,
definitely this one might be closer to the top of the pile of ones you would recommend to people who normally don't watch anime.
It'd be closer, yeah.
Closer to, but if their bar is other Netflix TV dramas, then I'm not sure this would
be a hard. You would need a certain very open-minded person to kind of have them watch it on their own.
And again, if you don't know anything about Astro Boy before you start this,
that's
hard. You're really
lost.
You're really lost.
Well, the last scene means nothing to me.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right, and then the last scene was the thing that made me go oh, that thing I know. I want to watch what happens to that guy.
There's no hook at all otherwise. Yeah.
I have absolutely no context for that.
This is not a gateway anime. By any means.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Probably not.
Yeah. Cowboy Bebop, gateway anime. Trigun may be a gateway anime to some degree. Dragon Ball was a gateway anime for a lot of people.
The more I think about it, the more I think Pluto could be a gateway anime. It just won't be a super satisfying one because there are pieces that are oh, that's so good. I want everyone to see that part.
I see. Okay.
How many episodes is this total?
8. So it's 8 hours.
Hour long. Okay.
Yeah.
Does it complete in a season 1 or is there a season 2?
It's a miniseries.
It's all done.
It's a miniseries, yeah. They're not going to make any more.
Yeah, they're not going to do any more.
Okay. I think that plays a role into it too. If someone was okay, there's only 8 of these. Someone was there's 20 of these.
True.
I would have been
You're absolutely
fuck
right.
that.
You're actually absolutely right.
Yeah. That's a big consideration.
One big reason why Cowboy Bebop is so easy to recommend to people who are new to anime is that there's only 26 episodes and each episode's only a standard 25-minute length.
Yeah.
So that
plays a huge role.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right.
So you're okay, 8 episodes, nothing beyond that, no other seasons. I might tune in to see what happens.
Yeah,
depending if I'm bored enough. Which
I'm glad you brought that logistical aspect back into this discussion because we're talking about would you stay tuned and that is a factor. It's a big factor.
Yeah. Knowing a show ended and people seem to like the way it ended really is a big factor in whether you want to
and how many episodes.
I was always very mildly Game of Thrones curious until it ended. then I was
Me
like,
too.
oh, I don't want to watch this anymore at all. You know?
Yeah, and then there are people who like swear it's like, no, but a lot of it was really good though. And then that's like me with this show where it's like, oh, but I don't know if I can recommend it though.
And also, it matters like how many seasons and how many episodes. Because I'm like, oh God, if you're telling me it's 20 seasons and each season's
really
20 episodes, I'm like, no, that's a lot of commitment. That's a heavy commitment.
It's really hard to push a new viewer of anime into like One Piece where there's like 1,000 episodes.
One Piece has 1,100 plus.
Yeah, and just be like, just watch One Piece. There's only 1,100 episodes.
Don't worry, they're readapting it.
Look,
doing it again.
there is only one show I will watch 10 seasons of, and that's Blacklist.
Fucking Blacklist.
So, that is the only show that I will watch for years.
And Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares.
Yeah.
That's the
There's
only
very
like, two
few shows I will do multiple into the double-digit seasons. Okay, Blacklist and Kitchen Nightmares. All right, that's it.
All right,
The list is short.
All right,
Well, there
I
you
think
go.
we've been around here long enough.
We all stay tuned barely.
With conditionals, would you stay tuned?
Conditional stay tuned. Yeah.
Yeah,
With a
so
group.
it's complicated.
Yeah, it's a complicated show.
Yes. So thank you everyone for listening in on our episode about Pluto. So the conclusion was we would stay tuned, maybe.
Yeah,
All
depending.
right. Sounds
in
good.
a group
Yeah.
setting.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, except for me, I did stay tuned, and
Yeah.
I did. But even with everything that I know now, it's still a maybe.
Yeah. All right. Well, I guess we'll see
Heck,
everybody
you know
next
what?
time.
I'll recommend episode 2 just to y'all, just to you two.
I'm planning to watch it. I am planning to watch episode 2 actually.
We can watch it together. I'll watch it with you.
Okay, yeah, okay. Because to me, the hook of like Adam is ostensibly the main character to me in my mind. So I'm like,
Well, it's kind of like Gotham Central. Like, oh, there's Batman.
Oh, there's Bruce Wayne finally. Like, let's talk to him. You know, so let's figure it out, right? So I want to know what's going to happen with Astro Boy. So
Yeah, like Astro Boy's cameo moments are all great. I love everything involving Adam in this show.
all right, okay, well,
Give it a shot.
all right. Well, next time. This episode was Dan's choice, but next episode will be Sarah's choice. I don't think she's chosen a show yet, right?
I have.
Oh, do you know what it is? Do you want to tell us?
Yes. It is going to be Interview with the Vampire.
Oh, okay.
okay.
So we've seen it, but Dan hasn't.
Yeah, I haven't.
see.
So it'll be very necessary for me to participate for this.
Yeah.
and Ricardo has seen it all as well.
Sorry, Dan, you don't have a fucking choice.
I'm the only one who will actually be able to answer the freaking question we ask.
Yeah. So I mean, that's interesting too. So
All right. All
and
right.
this is where Dan says he has no interest, so don't even
I know
bother.
nothing about vampires. I've never heard of vampires before.
I mean, that's part of how this show works. Exposing each other to things we otherwise would not, seek out ourselves and seeing if we would continue.
Part of me, my brain keeps trying to force someone to watch wrestling, and I'm like, this doesn't work. There's no way to start. What is the starting point of wrestling? That doesn't exist. You just kind of catch it and you go, what's going on here? And that's wrestling.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
that would be very different from the premise of the show.
Yeah. But, all right. Well, we have the other podcast, Newbie Star Trek. You can check it out as well. Or you can head on over to fugitiveframes.com. It's got links to all the stuff we do over there. But yeah, that's it. That's it, everybody. We stay
Thanks
tuned.
for listening.
Cool. We'll see you next time when we
See you
interview a
next
vampire.
time. Woohoo! Bye.
I'm not going to stay tuned.
All
He's
right,
already made his
away.
mind up.